Hi all, I'd like to do a special video today about the rise of Peter Constantinou. So this is a guy that's half Greek Cypriot. By the way, I'm of Greek Cypriot origin as well. My parents came from Cyprus about 40 years ago plus to England. So I'm particularly interested in a fellow Greek here. And you can see he's only rated 2264. And he had a remarkable tournament at the British. In fact, he didn't lose a single game, and his average rated opposition was 2340. So 2340 is a lot higher than many people on the same score as him. Definitely low down. So his expected score against this average opposition for his rating of 2264 was actually just 4.48. He scored 2.52 points higher than his expected score, so his rating will jump up as a result of this tournament. By the way, my score was 5, and my average opposition was quite high, 2246, compared to peers in my group of other players. And my expected score was 3.98, and I got 1.02 more. Unfortunately, losing that last game that I annotated yesterday, knocked it down, because it would have been maybe over 1.33. But anyway, so I gained some points over my rating 2138. But yeah, this is the most dramatic, jump. Howell did very well. He hit 1.55 for his huge rating of 2614. But as the most positive, pluses, Constantinou was one of the most positive. Hawkins did very well and got an IM norm, and so did another FM, Eggleston, and look at his plus score, 1.74. But let's focus on Peter Constantinou. That to me is the most dramatic and the most personally interesting. And I'd like to video annotate his final round encounter with Qg5 Arkell, who wasn't having a great tournament, it has to be said. We saw the video interview where he was held to a draw, but the rest of the tournament was lackluster. It was described as lackluster, considering he had, was the joint winner last year, and it was only on tie break, he lost the conquest. So what happened in his final game? He lost horribly to Constantinou. So let's have a look at that game. Okay, this is the last round encounter between Peter Constantinou playing Grandmaster Qg5 Arkell. So d4, knight f6, and now Peter played the very solid knight f3, so not yet committing the c-pawn. Does the c-pawn really want to go to c4? Well, after e6, White decides to leave the c-pawn alone, not so much to move it to c4, but to move it to c3. So we have the start of what looks to be a sort of London system type setup, where the bishop is going outside of the pawn chain. Now the London system has a bit of a dull but solid reputation, and usually the bishop goes on f4, but here it more excitingly goes to g5. And black plays knight bd7, and white plays knight bd2. And it's, look at White's pieces. They're going to be well placed. The bishops are going to be nice on, this bishop's usefully on g5, and the bishop could come out naturally to d3. So bishop e7, e3. But Keith interferes with the bishop, diagonal here. He immediately plunges into White's position with knight e4. But this has some severe downsides, which are clearly demonstrated by White. White took on e7. Took on e4, and after these exchanges now, knight d2, it provokes black to play f5, and white is a little better, and undermines immediately the e4 square by playing f3. So Keith decided to take. Let's see what happens if he had played knight f6. Knight f6, maybe bishop c4, or f takes e4, and it's dangerous for black. These double pawns, I'm not really sure. I'm not convinced, but I think white's slightly better. So anyway, Keith took on f3, and after queen takes f3, white still maintains a nagging edge. Bishop c4, pinning that e6 pawn. If black gets in the move e5, he might justify both the pawns as a sort of battering ram for white's king side. So Keith unpins the e6 pawn, castles, and now e5 is played. Peter's not worried though about this. He starts pressurizing the dark squares in the black position with the key move now queen g3. A very important move because now the queen also supports the move h4 and then queen g5 will be possible. So knight b6, the bishop keeps on that diagonal for as long as possible with bishop b3, and black is tempted to play e4. So here now we see this other key move. Look at the dark square strategy, dark square strangulation, and also keeping an eye on c7. So c6, Keith is wanting to play knight d5, and you know, he doesn't seem to well, he can't really do anything about white's dark squared grip here in the position. So queen g5, an annoying move for black, who probably wants to keep the queens on because his pawns are kind of fixed. If these pawns are doubled, it's not such a big deal. White will carry on with rook f4, rook f1, be threatening things like knight e4. So Keith decided to keep the queens on with rook f6, and now white simply played rook f2. It's a beautifully, harmonious and simple position to have against a grandmaster. Very little reason to be afraid because the resources available to black are very limited here. Bishop d7, now knight f1. So where is the knight going? g3. That's where it's going. From g3 it will be exerting pressure on both of these pawns. So black decided to kick queen a bit. It goes to f4. And now knight d5. So white has to give up the bishop now because the knight's too powerful on d5. It's eyeing e3. It's supporting f4. So white gives up the light square bishop. But look, the pawns are fixed and not on the same colour as the bishop. So this bishop's potentially bad. As long as white can keep the dark square grip, the liberation of this bishop is unlikely to happen. So knight g3, rook f8, rook af1. Look at the pressure white is exerting. Rook 6 to f7, and now white increases the stranglehold on position by playing the move h5, so restraining black's pawn structure on the king side even further. Black plays bishop b5. Maybe to come into d3, but also annoying, white's pressure. So are the rooks just lined up against nothing? Is white just trying to hold the position? Well, he plays now rook c1, and it has the implication that maybe, b3 and c4 to try and entangle and liberate the position via that breakthrough instead. So Keith plays now queen g5, offering the exchange of queens. But here, after takes, if black gets in f4, these pawns could be very dynamic. So Peter leaves that situation there and just plays for b3 to this breakout c4. And after bishop d7 now plays c4. So logically playing on the other side of the board, just holding black up on the king side. So rook c8. And now, after this, the situation has changed yet again. And Peter recognises this immediately, that with the rook there, he can go back now to the f-file. Because if d takes, then knight takes e4 is going to be, using this pin on this f-file. So queen e7, and now white took on d5. So it looks as though white is crashing through basically, because now there's real pressure for knight takes e4. So why did Keith apparently blunder here? Well, he has a very difficult position to try and hold. If he had played bishop c6, then takes according to Ribka, and now rook takes f5. So f5 is dropping off. The analysis engine is freezing up, unfortunately here. Sorry. So there's that. So there's no bishop e6. Is there a queen takes f4? Rook takes. This is still difficult for black because d takes, knight takes e4 using that pin, and also threatening knight d6, forking the two rooks. So say rook c7, knight d6. Again, white will be much better. Knight takes c4, and the knight coming to e5 will be a very dominating position for white. Much better knight than the bishop. So in the game, if we go back, after cf1, queen e7, Keith just let his d5 pawn go. But unfortunately, after rook f6, white plays the move queen e5, one step further infiltrating into black's position. And now there are major threats. In fact, Keith slips up now after queen f8 by allowing knight takes e4. This is a really crushing move. If f takes e, rook takes, g takes, rook f6, where is the black queen going? If it goes to g7, takes, and then rook g6. So this is getting to be quite crushing now after knight takes e4. So knight takes e4. Black played rook b6, and after knight c5, Keith had enough. He'd had enough of his position, and White's maybe going to play e4 and win f5. Let's say rook e8. Could he have played on with rook e8? Well, there's knight takes d7 here, just winning a piece. So if the bishop has to move, say it moves to b5, then rook takes f5. So really, black is getting torn apart here, and resigned after knight c5. So a very good rating performance by Peter Constantinou, beating Qg5 Arkell in the final round. Hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.